Hello and welcome back to Scale Down Customs. So in the last video, part one, we finished off with putting the clear coat on the body. So now as we're letting that cure up, it's time to move on to the interior and other pieces, getting those things cleaned off the sprues. So let's start doing that. Now you'll notice sometimes that I'll cut into the sprue a little bit more than actually flush with the part, depending on how the part is mounted in the sprue. For example, if I were to cut these wheels out, by the way, I did strip the chrome off of these just using the oven cleaner method. But for example, if I want to cut these out, I'm going to cut away from the part just a little bit, because when they're in the sprue like this, I find that if I cut right up against the part and the part doesn't have anywhere to move, it will actually force my flush cutters into the part a little bit more, and it'll cut a little bit of a groove into the part. So sometimes I'll cut away from the part just to get it off of the sprue, and then when it's free of the sprue, then I'll just finish flush cutting the rest of the sprue off of the part itself, and that way I get a little bit more of a cleaner cut on my parts if I do it that way, I've been finding. Now with these snap kits, you don't necessarily need glue, but I want to clean up some of these seams on these bucket seats, so I'm going to be sanding them down and stuff. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue just to kind of help those stay in there a little bit more securely when I start sanding. Alright, so I'm going to get these edges cleaned up and ready for primer, just using my sanding sticks, emery boards, and hobby knives, and just kind of scraping up some of those edges, those sprue cut points, and just getting everything cleaned up and ready for primer. Alright, so I got all my parts cleaned up and in primer. So we're going to do some accent painting on a couple pieces. So what I'd like to do is I want to do some red leather inserts on these seats, and so I'll just be using the Tamiya red for that. So we'll get those accents sprayed up, mask them up, and then spray the rest of the interior black. Now if you're thinking that this build looks really familiar, it's because it is. So Tom with the Scale Modeling channel built this exact model a few years ago, and so a lot of the techniques that I saw him do in there, I'm gonna do in my build as well. So again, thanks to Tom for a lot of the teaching and inspiration on his channel. So I'm gonna get these sprayed red and ready for masking. Alright, got the red trim on there ready for masking. I also decided to spray some gunmetal on accents on some of the interior door cards, the center screen on the dashboard, and some other pieces. So I also did some gunmetal on the wheels and the front grille, because what I want to do is I want to spray this black, and then I want to take the black off of the surfaces to reveal the gunmetal. And of course, to do that, you have to have a solvent-based paint with a water-based or an acrylic-based paint on top of that, so that you can remove the paint that you want without disturbing the paint that you don't want. So I'm going to try that as well. All right, so we'll get these masked up and then we'll start painting. All right, got everything masked up. And so for my black, my trim, and on my interior, I'm just going to be using semi-gloss black, the Tamiya. And then for the black, the acrylic black that I want to take back off of the wheels and the grille, I'm going to be using the Vallejo acrylic black, the water-based paint. So that way I can rub it off and not worry about my paint underneath. All right, so let's go get those painted. All right, so I got my parts sprayed with the undercoat of the Tamiya gunmetal, and then the overcoat with the Vallejo black. And so we're going to take some of that off to give us a diamond cut look. And to do that, we're just going to be using the Vallejo's airbrush thinner. And I'll just be using some Tamiya fine point Q-tips. And we're just going to work some of that top coat off. All right, so one of the keys of making this work is to not let your black coat or your acrylic coat set up for too long. So basically what I did is I airbrushed the black acrylic on there, and then I came down. I didn't even clean out my airbrush yet. I may regret that later. And then I came down and just immediately started wiping that away before it set up too long. Because I've actually tried it where I let it set up overnight and it took way too long to scrub off, and I ended up scrubbing off some of the underlying solvent-based paint underneath it as well. So stripped it down, started over, and tried that method, and that worked a lot better by immediately, as soon as you spray it on there, take it right back off. So I'm gonna get these other wheels cleaned up, and then we'll keep moving along. All right, so I've got most of the detail painting done, and before I can do final assembly on the interior, I want to put some carpet in. So I've got my Mod Podge, which is just basically a white glue. So if you have Elmer's white glue or something that works just the same, I just have a bunch of this left over, so I use that. So I've got my glue, my brush, my Ken's Custom Fuzzy Fur, flocking, and then just a tea sifter to sprinkle the carpet all about. All right, so we got the interior detail painted, stickers put on, assembled, ready to be put onto the chassis. So I think that'll do it for this video. So make sure you stay tuned to the next one. We'll continue work on the black trim around the body and getting some of the rest of the final assembly done for the Revell Snap Tight Max Ford Raptor. All right, so make sure you stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.